could the Jalen Duren and Detroit Pistons situation be headed towards a not only a series standoff, but with Jalen Duren coming off an all NBA third team season and still unsigned, it seems like he's threatening to take the qualifying offer. And if he does, he wants out of Detroit. And if he bets on himself and takes that 1 year, $9.6 million qualifying offer, that's not just about business. That's about sending a message to him in the future. Also, reportedly, the Brooklyn Nets and Michael Porter Jr. have been at a uptick as far as trying to get a contract extension done. And if they can't land one, they're going to look to trade. And we're talking about all those things, plus LaMelo Ball in Minnesota and more, right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of the Full Court Podcast. My name is Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at the Full Court YT on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it for today, y'all. So this comes from both Jake Fisher and Chris Haize that Jalen Duren is seriously considering taking the qualifying offer and then trying to find his way out of Detroit. Saying this one comes from Chris Haize. If he takes the qualifying offer, he really wants out. Like he is fed up, wants out, and he doesn't want to be there. Even if that is the case, I would say do not do that as well. By signing the qualifying offer, Duren will be signaling that he is willing to play for a short-term contract for far less than market value, just so he can get out of Detroit as quickly as possible. It would be an unprecedented move for a player of his caliber, but that would be an unprecedented offseason. This offseason has been filled with the craziest blockbuster trades, tons of anticipation on LeBron James' free agency decision, and much more. Duren's decision will be one of the biggest dominoes to fall, but there really is no telling what his contract for next season will look like. So, hey, I mean, we've heard things as far as like the Lakers pursuing him at one point. The Sacramento Kings were a team that were on the table at one point to try to give him the offer that he wanted. Detroit was going to plan on matching. And we've heard that the Pistons do plan on matching any deal that Jalen Duren gets, but no doubt that he's left situation with this. Of course, this would send a loud message. Taking the qualifying offer would mean that he wants out of Detroit. I don't think there's ever been a player that signed the qualifying offer with a team and then turned around and returned to that team after that qualifying ended, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's happened one or twice, but it doesn't happen very often in the NBA. And so a lot of people do think that the Detroit Pistons are undervaluing him after he had an all-NBA season. Yes, the playoffs were rough for him, but he's a young player, and there's you do not overlook the 82 games just because of a bad playoff run. And that's just my thought process. But if he does not trust the long-term plan of the Pistons or what they're doing, the qualifying offer does give it. It's the only way that players really have control in restricted free agency. And it will put pressure on Detroit to either improve the offer or truly risk losing him for nothing next offseason. And that's a problem in regard to. Now, is taking the qualifying offer risky for the player? Absolutely. Playing on a 1 year, $9.6 million deal, do not let him get hurt or anything like that. If he were to suffer a massive injury or something like that, it would completely tank his value, right? And he'd be leaving guaranteed money potentially on the table in the short run, but having that, be there in the long run when he does sign the new deal. One injury or another down season, especially after down playoffs, could then make the value around the league even much lower than regards to it. Centers can be undervalued at times. That's just the reality of it. But when you see like some of the backup centers in this league get $14 million for some teams, hey, it's there, right? If he wants out and wants to apply pressure, is this the best way to do it? That's the question of it, right? And so when you look at the Pistons side of this thing in regards to it, is that, do you pay him or do you hold your line and say it? Like, you look at the side that pay him. He's coming off an all-NBA season. He's young. He's productive. He pairs well with Cade Cunningham. And when you have players that fit with your star, you don't usually just let that walk away, not while they're both young and stuff like that. But at the same time, the Pistons may just not want to overplay him. If they don't view him as a max and definitely not a supermax player, that's where you look at the poor playoff showing and those type of things and look at that. Like, maxing a center can definitely limit your flexibility long term, especially if you have doubts about how good that center can be in the long term. And there you go in regards to it. And then you have to look at the trade market. Let's say that they do now, at this point in the offseason, want to look to do sign and trades possibilities, because that it's still a possibility that you can sign and trade them. You got to look at it, right? The Lakers and the Kings were connected at one point. The Kings definitely could still do something, maybe with Domantas Sabonis, which was the rumor at one point. The Lakers have kind of moved on. They have Walker Kessler now. There's no point in bringing Jalen Duren to that team. And so, like, Duren is a talented player. And a team like the Kings that are young, going younger, right? Still trying to move off Zach LaVine, but they have Darius Acuff there. They have some young players that they're trying to build and develop there. Bringing in Jalen Duren and basically saying, hey, go out there and prove that you aren't just, you're not going to be in the playoffs with us, so the playoffs can't expose you, right? That's what goes into it. So that's what leads to where they don't have to overpay. They can do the sign and trades and try to find some value there. And that's really the biggest leverage that the Detroit Pistons still have in this is the sign and trade scenarios, right? Because you can still sign and trade them and still bring back some real assets when it comes down to it. But not every team can match the price that the Detroit Pistons are naturally going to ask for Jalen Duren, and that's where it goes. So Jalen Duren taking less money to leave still may be the likely scenario here, and we'll see. I don't know how many offers come at this point in free agency for a player like Jalen Duren. You would have had to get that done earlier. But with it being a sign and trade, it does open up to other assets on the roster and stuff being used to try to acquire him if that's what teams want to do. And I guess we'll have to see if that's the route they ended up going. We'll see. This is a very interesting scenario. Not what I thought would happen after the season that the Detroit Pistons have, but it just goes to show you that nothing's ever as clear-cut and straightforward as what it may look like during the season. And this offseason has already been a wild one, and it looks like it's going to continue to be one. But let's lead into the next conversation. Michael Porter Jr., reportedly, Michael Porter Jr. and the Brooklyn Nets are at an impasse of a contract extension. And if this contract extension cannot get met, that they could look to trade him. And, this comes from Chris Haize as well, who says this. Michael Porter Jr.'s agent is scheduled to meet with the Brooklyn Nets. If it becomes apparent early on that an extension is not in play, then I do believe the next step will be the Nets and MPJ potentially parting ways. We'll see. He's on an expiring $40.8 million deal, and this is going to be hard to trade for, but it's in regards, it could be there, right? You look at, a lot of people thought that Michael Porter Jr. was going to be moved anyway when he was traded to the Brooklyn Nets. It ended up not happening, and they ended up holding on to him. And, now you sit in this place where now you're going to try to look to pivot and move him potentially. But this is kind of the route that people always thought that it was going to go. So now you have to ask the question in regards to this one. Should Brooklyn extend or just go ahead and move him now? The side of extending him is saying this. He averaged 24 points, 7 rebounds, and he was the number one option for Brooklyn last season. That's what he was. He already proved they can handle a bigger offensive role. He's been on a championship team. The size and the shooting that he brings are premium NBA skills, so you want to look at that one. And the fact that he does have championship experience with Denver, it's something that you look at for, right? And while Brooklyn is in a rebuild, you want stable veterans to help facilitate your rebuild. But at the same time, he's on an expiring $40 million contract, right? You finished 20-62, even with how good he played last year. And if he wants an expensive extension, Brooklyn should be very careful about that because you're not in a position where you're going to win anytime soon. And you shouldn't try to, well, not that you shouldn't try to, but you're going to be trying to develop your players. That's your focus right now. MPJ is good enough to earn an extension, but that doesn't mean that he's good enough that it's right for this team and where they are right now, right? And that's what you have to ask with that. And then there are questions on, did Michael Porter Jr., was the growth in the numbers real growth, or was it just because, he was on a team that didn't have very many expectations, right? Yes, he garnered more defensive attention because he was the scorer on that team. He scored efficiently. He proved that he's more than just a role player. I really do believe that because they gave him that go-to scoring option. The increased responsibility worked out for Michael Porter Jr. last year. But at the same time, you have to put context on those numbers. They were 20-62. Someone had to take shots on a rebuilding team. It was him. Being the number one option on a bad team is not the same thing as being a number one option on a winning team. And we've seen that on a winning team, especially a championship team, he's a role player. Now, that's not inherently a negative. Role players are important around the NBA, but that's just the reality of what Michael Porter Jr. was. Somebody had to take those shots. It was Michael Porter Jr. Now, do I think that some teams could look at Michael Porter Jr. and say to themselves, hey, this is a guy that we can add here that can bring some scoring punch for us. And if we're not betting on him to be our number one option, we're adding him to what we already have going on here, maybe. But moving $40 million contracts isn't impossible in the NBA, but it can be very tough at times. And that's what they're going to have to try to figure out. But I'd say this, the Nets have already put themselves in a situation to where they have a number of players that are just, it doesn't really fit what you're expecting them to do, right? You brought in Julius Randle. You could move him at a trade deadline as well, too. And Michael Porter Jr. still, even with the numbers, he played 52 games last season. It's not like he played 65, 70 games or something like that. So now you have Julius Randle who could take over that same role that Michael Porter Jr. had as a number one scoring option, and you can up his value and turn around and flip him again at the trade deadline. So there are a number of things that the Nets should look at in regards to this and what it means for their future of where they're going. But at the end of the day, you would think that they need to move him anyway, right? That would be the common thought, is that you have to move him anyway. But I guess we're going to see what happens in regards to that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Should the Nets be looking to extend Michael Porter Jr., or should they be looking to move on from him by any means necessary? and then, continue their rebuild with their younger players? Let me know that down below. All right, let's move into the last topic for today. Tim Connolly has talked about the addition of LaMelo Ball and what he expects LaMelo to bring to this team, and he said this. He's a lead guard. He's a real point guard, which is hard to find. I think you see the impact he has on his teammates, and I think this is probably well-timed. He's been through a lot, but he's still only 24 years old. He's a guy that we think is going to help elevate us, and hopefully we can help elevate him as well. I feel like it's God's plan. I just leave it up to him, and I just feel extremely blessed. That last part was from LaMelo Ball. So, this was one of the trades that was unexpected this year, right? And there have been some questions about the fit with LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards, and that's fair questions to make. Now, of course, this could unlock Minnesota in their true potential because you do have LaMelo, who is a lead player in regards to it, who can take pressure off Anthony Edwards, his passing, his feel for the game, the pace that he pushes, it all is there. He can help the Minnesota Timberwolves stay more connected offensively. And there are times where the Timberwolves team just needed an additional shooter and scorer with regards to that. And at 24 years old, there is still tons of upside regardless of how long LaMelo Ball has been in the league. But it still is a risky bet. LaMelo has had tons of injury issues. The chemistry is a gamble there that's not necessarily the easiest fit on paper. And Anthony Edwards is still going to need the ball in big moments. And even though we've seen LaMelo kind of grow as an off-ball player last year because of the rise of Con Knipple, you have to ask those questions in regards to that too. So the ultimate question for the Minnesota Timberwolves is LaMelo and Anthony Edwards going to become the next star duo? Or are you going to find out that their styles actually clash and don't fit together as well as you want to? It can be a very dangerous pairing. I think that it can be. LaMelo and Anthony Edwards can find balance, especially in transition, setting early offense, those type of things. Edwards gives LaMelo a superstar scoring target that he has not played with. Closest thing being that is to Con Knipple, and Miles Bridges as well as Brandon Miller. So you have that part of it, right? And I think that Minnesota becomes harder to trap. They become harder to double team. They become a more dangerous team potentially in the half court. LaMelo's creativity can make the offense more fun and less predictable. And that's the one thing that has really stood out about the Minnesota Timberwolves at times, that their offense got to be very predictable. And there's going to be things. And now you also have to look at Anthony Edwards doesn't have to create everything late in game like he's had to the last couple of years. But like I said, this could get messy. LaMelo has to find a way and prove that he can impact winning without needing to dominate the possessions in which he did early on in his career. And Ent's development as a playmaker can also help this combination grow as well. So the defensive balance could become an issue. That's why I think they did hold on to Rudy Gobert. We're going to see what they do in regards to that one. Also, like, the defensive part of it is going to be the fun part to watch here. Can they be good enough defensively, or are they just doubling down and trying to outscore teams? That's what you're looking at in regards to this, and we'll see what's going to happen there. But overall, I think this is going to be a fun roster. It's going to be a fun pairing and fun to watch out. I think, Io becomes even more important in this. Jaden McDaniels and his defense becomes even more important in this as well. But you also want a player like Juan Berenger as well to grow into that role and play tougher defense as well. And you hope that that's going to get from you. The balance and the depth of this Minnesota Timberwolves team is going to dictate a lot of what happens for this team next season. And I'm very interested to watch to see how it goes. I think it could be very fun. I think it could be very dynamic and fluid. But at the same time, it could very well get messy as well. And I guess we'll see what's going to happen in regards to that one. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys sound off in the comment section down below. What do you think this Jalen Duren situation ends up going? Do you feel like LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards are going to be able to figure it out? And do you think any contender could actually be interested in Michael Porter Jr. even with that $40 million contract and add if he becomes available in the open market? Let me know those things down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at the Full Court YT. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBACentralShow@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything basketball related. And I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
Been a presentation of the Breaks Media.